Okay, what do we have behind us here, Seamilk?
So I'm going to go through a little bit of the history of this whole thing. This one
Okay.
I'm interested in. You can maybe talk more about
Sure.
the current days because you're more of a man of today. So anyway, long story short, Mao, Chairman, do you know Chairman Mao?
Yeah.
You know Chairman Mao.
We all know
First dictator, well, I shouldn't say first dictator. First communist dictator of China.
There he is, Chairman Mao. For those of you who don't know, it's this ugly man on the note.
Yes.
Okay.
Believe it or not, people in China will say he's handsome.
They do. They say he's handsome but a little fat.
But a little fat.
He's
But
also
a little fat
on
is key.
the 5 RMB note.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if somebody in China calls you handsome, you know that you're being you're the same level as Mao.
He's even on the 1 RMB note, which is green, so it's kind of see-through.
Harry
I mean,
Mao
he's
Mao.
on all of the notes except for the very lowest denomination notes.
Where they put the minorities.
Yeah. So you've got this 10-cent note over here. So this Jiao note.
Yeah, it's 10 Chinese cents.
See, that's got some minorities on it. And then you've got the Wu
Wu
Jiao.
Mao.
Yeah, the Wu Jiao or Wu Mao note, which has got some
Wu Mao?
minorities.
That's what the Wu Mao is.
Yeah, this is a Wu Mao. Those are the only notes, and then there's also a green one, which is like a 2 Jiao or something.
Yeah, yeah. That's
which
right.
I don't have one here, but those are the only ones that don't have Chairman Mao on it.
Correct.
So it's like the very crappy denominations.
A little historical tidbit as well. Mao said that he never wanted to be on the money because he hated money. He was all about ration ticketing,
Yeah, yeah.
So it's funny that he is now currently on the money. So anyway, the worst despotic dictator in the world, responsible for tens of millions of deaths, right?
Correct.
Was also responsible for a lot of births, believe it or not. So what he did was he had a Rejuvenate the Nation campaign.
Yeah.
And part of that, Great Leap Forward, that whole kind of, let's get ahead, let's make China way, way better than the rest of the world, actually better than the Soviet Union, was to have more people. Does that make more sense?
Yeah, because you have more manpower, means you got more people
More
feed into the meat grinder.
Mostly it was for steel production, right? So he wanted in farming. So he wanted grain output and steel output.
Yeah.
Just those numbers. They wanted those numbers to get up there. So they said, let's have more babies. So they have this huge campaign where they incentivize people to have kids.
They were paying the rural peasants to have kids. So for each child that you have, you get a fat paycheck.
Correct. So then they go, holy shit, what have we done? We've pretty much doubled our population.
Yeah.
We can't feed everyone. There's massive famine. All this shit goes to hell.
Yeah.
Right? Bad move. So they go, what do we do to institute a policy to kind of reverse this? Well, the only logical thing we can do now is birth control and family planning. And what do? They made the one-child policy.
Yeah, everyone's heard of the one-child policy, and that means you are only allowed to have one child, which led to, unfortunately, a generation of spoilt single children, which are called little emperors. I mean, we all know that single child growing up. I mean, maybe you were one of them, but
I wasn't.
Usually...
I knew one. I knew one.
You know them. They're too spoiled. I mean, I hope my daughter doesn't turn out like that because she's an only child. I'm going to be very careful about that. But, when a single child is spoiled too much, they become insufferable like human beings. You know what I mean? I hate to say it, but it's like absolutely insufferable. Now you got a whole nation of that in China.
And the thing is,
right now.
I do know some single children that are actually that grow up to be great. Right?
Of course,
but
that's
when you have a generation,
yeah.
that means there's a lot of bad ones
Sure.
amongst that. So you're absolutely correct. So Mao, what does he do? Well, Mao's cabinet basically says, listen, we got to do something pretty soon here to make the one-child policy, right?
Yeah.
One-child policy goes on to be a long-term thing. And when I say long-term, I'm talking about from the 70s all the way up until when we were still in China.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I personally know people that were born without an ID because they had to be hidden or else they would have been killed.
Call them Heirin, like they actually call them black people, but it doesn't mean, the color of your skin. It just means like a gray area person,
Correct.
Like under the table person.
So what happened was a lot of societal impacts happened because of the one-child policy. What happened was people were forced to have one child.
Yes.
Right? So they had these campaigns, and I actually want to talk about some of the campaigns that were had, and I want to make you guys understand that the current campaign that we're talking about, which is incentivizing births, is just the same as the campaigns throughout China. And I want people to understand that when I talk about campaigns from the past, it's not different than how the government operates today.
Yeah, if they want a campaign, they could just have it.
Right.
Remember they had that campaign to get rid of stray dogs.
Sure.
So what they did was
when we were in China.
Yeah, this happened probably 5 years ago.
Yeah, not that
6
long
years
ago. Yeah.
What they did was they sent out the Chengguan, which is basically the urban management teams. It's like an arm of the police, onto the streets, and they killed all the dogs.
Yeah.
Not just the stray dogs,
No.
people's pets and stuff. Beat them to death on the side of the road in public, right there.
Yep.
Okay. We got footage. We're not going to show you.
No.
But, you know,
There's a lot of
that's
footage we could show.
no, that's the kind of thing we're talking about. Like when the government says we're going to implement something, we've got a little policy, it just goes into full
Right.
force.
So there was a policy, and this is some of the slogans from this policy.
Yeah.
This is in 1991.
Yeah.
And you need to understand the context of this because this is kind of like what we're dealing with today in the opposite. So this is called the 100 childless days.
Yeah, so
Okay.
before you talk about the 100 childless
Sure.
days, when you hear about the one-child policy, most people think, oh, okay, so that means that, you know, when families want to have a kid, they just have one kid. And they plan around having one kid. No, it's more like if you have a child and then you get pregnant again by mistake or on purpose, the government will forcefully
Correct.
kill that child.
Right.
Okay, and any further children that you have or want to have. So it's not like this, oh, it's just some kind of family planning thing. It's a brutal system which completely takes away people's reproductive rights and takes away people's own family rights. You know, that's the big difference here. So it's
Right.
not like it's just some little policy. It was disgusting.
Yes.
Just how bad and brutal the government was.
That's a good
when it came-
segue because what I wanted to say is
Yeah.
this is a clear example of one of those.
Yeah,
okay?
please explain, because this is a horrific thing that happened.
This is called the 百日无害, which is 100 days of no children, right? And this happened in Xin County, in Guan County in Shandong. So this is
Yeah.
up north. We spent time in Shandong
Yeah,
County.
yeah.
In Shandong province. And this is in May 1991 and ended in August 1991, right? And the idea was to dramatically reduce the population. So this isn't just when it was first instituted by Mao.
No.
This is a hangover from Deng Xiaoping and Jiang Zemin.
Yeah.
Kind of a collaborative thing that a lot of local policymakers working under the CCP would come up with quotas to impress the central government.
Yeah.
So what they would do is they would say absolutely no children are going to be allowed to be birthed
born, yeah.
for 100 days. Now, that was not just limited to abortions. You were finding small babies that were already birthed being I'll spare you the details, but there's pictures. Don't look this up, by the way.
No,
if
it's
you look
awful.
up the childless 100 days on Google or Baidu or whatever, you will see some absolutely horrific things
very
you don't want to see.
disturbing, very
Anyway,
disturbing.
they aborted every single term pregnancy.
Doesn't matter how late or
Doesn't matter how
early.
late, how early, whatever. They killed infanticide. They killed babies that were already born.
Yeah.
And it was all to meet that quota, right? And they had these slogans around, and a lot of these, I'll translate some of these into English, which will be this will be a mess.
Yeah.
One of them here says, "I would rather stop having children to allow the Communist Party of China to relax, to be rest assured."
Okay.
Right. This one says, "Hang them on a rope or give the mother a bottle of poison or medicine." Right, to abort it. That's that was like a slogan.
Yeah.
I would rather kill the baby and let it flow out than to give birth. That was one of the slogans. I resolutely will never allow myself to have more children. So these are the kind of, the red banner stuff you see right
Yeah,
there.
this
That's
kinda
the kind of
crap you see
stuff
in
that
the
was all over. You can go through the next slides.
Sure.
This was just one of many campaigns like this. This one was prolific and kind of documented because people were finding babies in fields and on the road,
Yeah.
which was horrendous, right?
These are, it's awful. Then these are some of the one-child policy banners that you'd see, which basically just tells you that, it's better to have one child. It'll be everywhere. In fact, there's a picture I took myself in here. Is that coming up next?
Yeah,
already?
I just
All
put
right,
these
we're
in
just going
here.
through a couple.
This is during, the 70s and 80s and 90s.
Yeah, this is 70s, 80s, and 90s. But the reason why I'm putting in a picture, that's an older one.
Coming up.
Yeah, picture that I took myself. Let's see, there we go.
Yeah.
I took this picture myself. Now this was in 2007.
Right.
Okay, so we're talking about.
Oh, no, this went up to 2018.
Yeah.
17, 18.
Now the reason why they got rid of this, they actually painted over it. This is in the Louhu district of Shenzhen, which is a first-tier city in China. And by the way, it says up there, eugenics is happiness.
有生幸福.
Yeah, that's really the translation.
Yeah.
Eugenics. And then they show, for those of you listening, it's massive. It's on the side of a building, right? It's got this big picture of one mother, one father, and the father's got a camera, like a DSLR camera in his hand. And, they've got balloons and they're in a beautiful field and stuff. And this is to prove that if you only have one child, that it's actually better. It's you're basically making for a better genetic, better, I don't know what, like a better family.
A better quality child.
And a better quality child. You're going to have a better quality of life. So
because it shows he is rich.
Yeah,
right?
he's going to have a camera and stuff because, like those expensive DSLR or whatever, you know, that's not something that everyone can afford.
Sure.
So the fact of the matter is this particular building, I took this photo. I used to pass by it every day. That's why I took the photo. It got painted over just before the 2008 Summer Olympics because they knew that foreigners would be coming into the city.
But this stuff is everywhere all over China.
Yeah.
You don't make it sound like this was all like covered up. It was just because you were in a big city.
No. Remember, every time we went on our motorbikes, we'd
everywhere.
see this crap everywhere.
This is not the past. What I was trying to say is this weird policy, that 100 days of whatever, this forced abortion stuff went up until now, right? This is not an ancient thing. We would go into villages, even outside major cities. They'd have a family planning clinic, and it's not the kind that you get in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's the forced abortion clinic. It's the place where they go and make sure that the women were not having more than one child.
Yeah, and they'll check up on you, and they have vans that go around where they would force abortions in the vans.
Not only that, they would check in the vans. They would do like the very rural ultrasounds.
Yeah, exactly.
Checking. So,
I mean,
what are some of the punishments that they would do to women that would have more than one child?
Well, obviously they'd force the abortion.
Yeah, but there's shame involved as well.
Oh yeah,
if they're repeat offenders,
they would do disgusting things like put the aborted fetus next to them on the bed and take photos and things. And it's, you can look it up. It's pretty gross.
That happened. That happened not once, more than once. So what they would do is, they would put the aborted fetus, the baby, next to the mother.
Yeah.
So when she wakes up. Oh, here we go. But the worst part of that was that they would take photos and put them in the newspaper.
Sure.
So if a woman had more than, like, let's say 3 children or something, and she got caught, forced sterilization, and then the forced abortion, they would shame her in the newspaper with this. And you guys have to understand, this is the government we're talking about today, where people are looking at it as an alternative to American democracy or something like this. I'm not trying to be a dick and facetious and stuff. This is the kind of policies that China implements. And this is what ties into our topic today, is that all this horrific stuff, this like knee-jerk reaction stuff, is what they're doing now. Again, it's the same thing except reverse.
No, it's in reverse.
So we found some, and again, this is going to be tough to verify officially because the official documents have actually been revoked because of the online backlash.
Sure.
But that's not to say some good journalism was done. So why don't you explain what's going on with the whole vasectomy thing?
Okay, well, I mean, here's the thing. In China, what usually happens is, if they want to do something, they just do it. They don't necessarily tell people about it.
Sure.
So what's been going on is people now have been trying to get vasectomies.
Yeah.
Okay. And they've been turned down, like in multiple places. There are tons of people that have been reporting online that, hey, they tried to get a vasectomy. The doctor said that there's a new policy that doesn't allow them to do the surgery anymore in their hospital.
Right.
You know, that's the first thing. And they're trying to go all over the place. They'll go to multiple different clinics and multiple different hospitals, and they'll be told, sorry, you can't have a vasectomy. And the ones that have been able to successfully have a vasectomy, they've had to prove that they're married and already have children. If they have been single or with no children, they're not allowed to have a vasectomy.
Yeah.
So the Washington Post actually did an article about this, and they actually contacted something like...
Oh, some good journalism.
They contacted, I think, 12 or so different
Yeah.
Public hospitals, including in Beijing and Shanghai. So we're talking about the top of the, food chain here. And all of them said that they were not allowed to do this procedure anymore and that they don't offer it anymore. So even though there hasn't been like this big announcement...
There is internally.
Yeah, internally, they're not allowed to do it. And this is what China does, okay? It's very straightforward. They don't want something to happen. They will pretend. They say, oh, you know what? You have control over your reproductive rights in China.
Yeah.
Okay, it'll be in the constitution and everything. Just like
freedom
of speech is. But then when you actually try to do it, so you live this completely like crazy lifestyle, just believing that everything's cool until you try to do it. So you think everything's free and nice in China until you get punched in the face.
Right.
So there you go to get your vasectomy, and they're like, nope, sorry, we don't do that. It's against the policy now. But you've never heard of this before.
No.
No. And so you can read, there are tons of people out there right now that have been trying to get vasectomies and have been failing, and they've been traveling to different cities and different
actually
areas.
going a lot of people trying to go to Thailand to do it.
Yeah. So, this is just, again, how China's trying to force the population to grow is they are trying to prevent vasectomies from happening because they want at least accidental births. You know what I mean?
Yes.
At the very least, because I'm pretty sure that they're going to be clamping down on abortions.
Yeah, so this is the internal document.
Which is weird because they're like the king of abortions, aren't they?
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean? If any country is an abortion, I don't know, expert.
Lord Abortion. That's a Cradle of Filth song. That's China.
Yeah.
For sure. It doesn't even matter where you stand on the issue about abortion. It's very dehumanizing the way it's done in China.
Oh,
like, even if you're pro-choice, pro-life, it doesn't matter. Like, it's very... I don't know how to explain. It's super messed up.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shame involved, but then at the same time, it's also there's no humanity involved, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, long story short, the document that came out from the central government.
Yeah, so this is official.
This is official. It says that every member of the ruling party, which there are 95 million people, so keep in mind there's 95 million CCP members, should shoulder the responsibility and obligation of the country's population growth and act on the 3-child policy. So finally we got to see the 3-child policy in writing.
Yes.
Which was great. I mean, that was one of those things where people are like, oh, it's just speculation at this point. No, this was central state media.
Yeah.
Using the words 3-child policy. 3-child policy meaning that you are incentivized and should have 3 children, not that you can only have 3 children. It's have as many children as you want, and you should have 3 kids now.
One thing you have to realize is that China has already offered cash subsidies.
Yes.
And extended parental leave as incentives for people to have more children.
Right.
What they don't seem to understand is that people are not going to have more children right now because it's so expensive to raise a child in China. The way things have morphed and changed in the modern day in China is that because of this whole one-child thing in the past, raising a child has become very expensive because there's only one to raise, right? So education is incredibly expensive. Everything that you need to do surrounding the upbringing of a child has become very expensive simply because of the previous structure. So now if you want to have 2 children, it's not something that most families can afford or want to do. So by offering these token little incentives here and there, it's not going to change people's minds. No. And that's why they're trying to force the issue now by denying vasectomies. And even in this particular article, which, by the way, was taken down.
Well, I want to finish it.
Okay.
This is the chilling part.
Okay, get to the chilling part.
You can finish your statement.
But what I was saying is, now they're also trying to force party members to have X amount of children. And it's really only a matter of time before they actually just try to force the population as a whole to have more children.
This is just like the lab leak theory, and just like this, when we make claims, we're like, the writing is on the wall here. They're going to absolutely start not only incentivizing, but then start forcing people. It could be party members, could be people to have kids. People are like, ooh, you know, the shill types. Shows, no, it was never in writing. Well, yeah, it is, because listen to this.
Yeah.
We called this like last year.
Yeah, pretty much.
No party member, I quote, no party member should use any excuse, objective or personal, I guess personal reason, to not marry or have children, nor can they use any excuse to only have 1 or 2 children. So there you go. 3-child policy in action. Yeah. The internet went apeshit.
Yeah,
they were like, Weibo was like, what are you talking about? So now you force us to only have 1 kid. We can't even afford to raise that kid because it's getting wildly expensive in China.
Yeah.
We can't buy a house.
Yes.
Right? It's getting too people our generation.
Yeah.
And now the government is telling us we have to have 3 kids. People are like, F that.
Sure.
Right? I'm out.
Yeah.
Like, that's why they stopped the vasectomies.
Yeah.
They try to quell all this burning kind of hatred that's going around because people are mad. They don't want to be forced to have...
I mean, just imagine you grew up and you were forced to only have 1 child, or you were forced to not have any brothers and sisters. And,
and they killed your baby, by the way.
And now they're trying to force you to have more children. It's got to be the biggest slap in the face ever.
Yes.
You know?
So that official document, which was from the China Reports Network, was removed. And China does this to stop kind of dissent. I think, and they also read the room wrong all the time. They think that people will be totally okay with something, and with this, people are like, absolutely not.
No.
And it starts rebellions, right?
Yeah.
So they removed that. That doesn't mean that internal that document is not internal now.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that they're not going to enforce it.
For sure.
Right? They just removed it so people can't talk about it.
They removed it from the public eye. Yeah.
So we thought it was kind of interesting to touch on. because I almost didn't want to believe it in the beginning. We were talking about this, but it's like very CCP-esque to want to have to force people to have kids, and it's definitely going to happen.
You know what I'm going to call, and this is maybe a little on the fringe, but
sure.
I feel like they're actually going to get to a point where they will artificially inseminate.
Yeah, I can see that.
You know what I mean? Instead of having abortion vans driving around, they'll have
insemination vans
driving around. I just really feel like that's actually something that could happen in the future.
So just to cap this off so that people understand the reason behind this, because why would you have this absolutely ape-like policy about killing all these babies, 100 days of no whatever babies campaign? Why would you have all these? Well, that was to stop the rapid population growth and to be able to feed everyone.
Yeah.
With this, what's happening is China's facing a demographic crisis. I got some stats here.
Okay.
More than 18% of the population currently in China is over 60 years old, right? And that's from the 2020 census. That's huge. Sure. That's a very, very old populace. And you're in a country that doesn't really have any social benefits.
That's right.
Believe it or not, China is not like Japan. It's not even like America. There are no little social benefits.
You don't have a 401k or whatever.
Yeah. Your pension, I mean, my uncle, say my uncle-in-law, his pension, he had to bribe the government to get a pension,
right?
Because they said that his work wasn't important enough, so he could get 200 RMB per month, right?
Yeah.
Just think about that.
What's that in US dollars for everyone?
Wow, like $40-50.
Yeah.
Right? I think it was 200. It's either 200, and then another person I know got like 800 or something. Yeah. It was like $120 a month for their retirement. Yeah. That's not a social benefit, and guess what? That's in a high-end city.
Sure.
So you're talking about 90% of the population gets worse than that.
Yeah.
So there's no social net. So you have 18% of the population that's over 60. They can't feed themselves. They can't pay for themselves.
Yeah.
So you in China, filial piety. Grandkids, kids, they have to take care of their parents, right?
Yeah, and I mean, look, I've shown it in my videos before, but the amount of old people that you see like scrounging for trash and for stuff,
insane.
In order to, you'll see like old men and women in their 70s and 80s walking around digging through the garbage cans and carrying huge loads of cardboard or polystyrene or whatever to go and recycle it in order to make a little bit of money. And these people should be freaking lying in a bed.
In a bed, right? There's an old, ancient lady. She used to come to our what's it called? Our little barbecue place. And she used to try to sell us meth. Yeah. She was like 85.
Yeah, I remember that.
She was like, "Yo, Bing Choir." She called like ice cubes or something.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, the finish off the stats here. It says from the country's National Bureau of Statistics in November. So these are. Can we trust Chinese statistics?
Yeah, exactly.
They were 8.5 births per 1,000 people in 2020. The first time in decades where that figure has fallen below 10. So to flip it on its head here, in 1978, the figure was 18 per 1,000. Yeah. So you're looking at a country that's probably, you're not using their statistics, using logic, probably has already entered demographic crisis.
Sure.
And so the only way to really combat that is to force people to have kids. So it makes sense why all this stuff is happening.
Because remember, there's another way to combat that, and that is through immigration. And China is a non-immigrant country. They hate outsiders. They effing hate us, okay? They hate us so much that they don't allow us to immigrate. Even if, like you and me, lived there for so long. I lived there for 14 years. I got married to a local person, and I just couldn't become a citizen or immigrate. They don't allow it.
No.
Imagine you got married to somebody in, I don't know, America and lived there for 14 years, paying taxes and having a proper job and everything, and following the law and doing all that kind of stuff. I'm pretty sure you'd end up with a citizenship. In fact, I know it because so many Chinese people that I know have married locals in America and now have American citizenship.
Correct.
And I'm talking about Canadian citizenship.
Dude, you can even immigrate to Japan.
Even South Africa. Yeah. Doesn't matter where. But if you go there and dedicate that much time of your life and you marry a local and you make a business and you bring in tax money and all that, you can become a citizen. But not China. You see, so they can't fix their demographic problem because they're not willing to allow immigrants in.
No, and I do want people to walk away from this knowing one thing is that this stupid, absolute dumb myth that's perpetrated by both the CCP and by Westerners who are anti-CCP, that China always plays some massive long game. Yeah, in some ways, I guess maybe like in terms of investing in institutions abroad to further their influence. That's long term. But this idea that China's got it all figured out already. China's a reactionary country.
They do everything by the seat of their pants.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
we saw how it
all
worked.
the time. Oh, there's a problem. Let's just quickly try to fix it.
Yes.
You know?
It's always very knee-jerk reactions.
Ignore it until it's like something terrible happens,
festers.
and you have to do something about it. You know what I mean?
So I want people to understand that.
It's something you will only know if you live in China. Like the maintenance, you know, they'll let the maintenance of something slide, something important like gas pipes and stuff, until there's an explosion. Then all of a sudden, everything has to be double-checked around the country.
Right.
You know? Or, you know, too many people have died from escalator accidents. Let's make sure that we crack down on it. You know, it's always something like that.
Yeah. Or we're getting annoyed at how many people are selling stuff on the street. Round everyone up.
Get rid of it. Yeah, but they have to wait till it gets to a certain point. They won't address it. They're not proactive. They're reactive.
Very lazy leadership.
Very lazy.
And they'll let things just really go. That's why China feels so chaotic and free to a lot of people that go visit there, because nothing's being addressed. There's no rule or law and order until it's too late, and then they'll go crazy on it.
For the longest time, we've all been told that China has 1.4 billion people, largest population in the world, and it turns out that this has probably not been true this whole time. Okay? And by the way, India now has overtaken China's population in size. And this is important. We'll talk about it in a minute, why it's important. But just to show you that it's now being reported in the news and Reuters and Bloomberg and so on. There's a population comparison. Now, listen, anyone who's been to China would say absolutely China has the largest population. You would think so. I mean, look at this footage that I took. This is the 2017 Chinese New Year. Well, they call these flower markets, and you go to these so-called flower markets when it's Chinese New Year, around Chinese New Year, especially down south. And the whole thing is to go and buy these kind of lucky flowers and lucky plants that bring luck. You know, they got those weird looking, whatever you call them. What are those, like pear looking things? You know, they're like weird looking things. You know what I'm talking about, right? It's like yellow. Kind of looks like a pear, but like with octopus legs on it almost. Is it a Buddha's hand? Oh, it's a lemon. Okay, whatever. They sell those. They sell those little orange trees that you're not supposed to eat the oranges. Yeah, they suck, but you're not supposed to, though. It's bad luck to eat them. You got to leave them in your house to go rotten. Yeah. And look, it's a very vibey thing, but I mean, look at the amount of people. I filmed this myself. I tell you what, it is one of the most uncomfortable situations to actually be in. So anyway, this is like the entrance to the flower market.
Imagine a stampede.
Yeah, no, that's the thing. If there is a stampede, man, there'll be a lot of fatalities. You know, we saw that thing that happened in South Korea recently, and this is the kind of situation where a stampede would just absolutely flatten everyone. Very vibey and jovial, but if you're claustrophobic and you don't like people bumping up against you and brushing against you and touching you, you will not like it at all, because you cannot avoid that. You're actually moved along by the crowd because there's so many people there. You know what I mean? Anyway, to bring it back to the whole population thing, I just want to sum it up for you. You got something to say?
You better believe you are gonna lose your wallet and phone if you're not careful.
I mean, sure, yeah, you got to be very careful. Here's the whole deal with what's going on with the population. It looks like China's been over-reporting its population for a very long time. But this is the way it works in China. When it comes to official figures, they're really... The best way to describe them is they are chabuduo, okay? It's just what's convenient to the time. They will report like, oh, we had a great GDP growth this year, because it makes it look like the economy's doing well. Oh, there's proof that I was there, by the way. That's me in this crowd. They'll be like, yeah, I know, I'm just saying. A lot of people, they'll be like, oh, yeah, whatever, you didn't take that. That's true, I did take it. Anyway, they'll report numbers that are convenient to them. Just look at the COVID death numbers that they release now. Okay, it was like, what, 30 or something? They're reporting 30, and, you know, in the news, you're seeing all these, like, funeral homes with lines outside and crematoriums just burning 24/7. So they were like, you know what, people, they're not going to buy this number of 35. So what sounds like kind of bad but not too bad? I know, let's say 60,000, you know? So then they released a number of 60,000. That's a bunch of BS, by the way. If you believe that, there's something wrong with you. There's definitely more than 60,000 died from COVID, or we should say died with COVID is probably a better way to say it. in China.
I'm about to be crematorium milk.
Okay, but quite seriously though, yeah, don't die with all these like sicknesses you have. Yeah. So anyway, back to the whole reason why it's a big deal that their population has been overreported. Okay, number one, why would you overreport your population? What's the point? I guess it gives you that status of being the world's largest population. So that, first of all, makes you very attractive to investors, makes you very attractive to companies that want to piece that market. They're like, oh, if we can sell our product in a country of 1.4 billion people, there's potentially that many customers, right? So you'll get a lot of interest of people trying to invest and trying to move into China, so to speak. There's that. It also puts forward this idea of stability. So, I mean, if you're going to set up a factory in China, with a population that size, you think, okay, it's going to be stable. There will be a stable labor force for my manufacturing for eternity, basically. Because with a population that size, we don't need to worry about them running out of, laborers to do the job. So that's another reason why they do that. Another reason they do it, of course, is for domestic propaganda.
China's the most safe, stable, or something.
That's correct, or something. Of course, for domestic propaganda, to be able to tell the local people, we have the largest population in the world, we're the strongest, we're the biggest, it's very effective. I know a lot of Chinese people take a lot of pride in the fact that they are the largest population in the world. And I know some people are very upset that they're not the biggest country, because when they find out that Russia, for instance, has more land area, they get upset. And here's the thing, though. It works very well. It also works very well for everything. When you've got the wrong numbers being put out there, it skews everything. Think about it. People will think, oh, China's got a massive military because they got 1.4 billion people. But if it's far less than that or less than that, then it's not true. You've been basing all of your predictions on fudged numbers. Okay, so for them to have the appearance of having a large population like this is actually beneficial to the Chinese government in the long run. But it's been speculated for a long time, and there have been leaks that China's been overcounting its population by hundreds of millions of people. And it's just come to light that for the first time they have officially reported that their population is shrinking. And it's had the lowest birth rate since I think it's 1961 or something like that, before the Great Famines and all that nonsense. So, yeah, it's looking pretty bad. And the reason why it's bad is, without getting too much into this whole thing, is when you've got an aging population like this and not enough people having babies, you have a problem where you're going to get a lot of old people and not enough young people to not only be laborers and all that kind of thing, but to pay taxes and look after the older people. It's not a good situation. And so now what it's doing is it's painting China as not such a stable place. It's painting China as not a place that you want to invest and build a factory in, because in a couple of years' time, there may not be such a big labor pool to pull from, for instance. So when you look at it from that point of view, you understand why they've been overinflating their population numbers.
China's the least safe, most unstable, or something.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, look, guys, at the end of the day, this is a big crisis, and the Chinese government has been frantically trying to find a way to fix this. Okay, first of all, it's a crisis of their own making because of the one-child policy. That's why China's in this situation right now. But they tried to introduce a two-child policy, and nobody decided to take the bait. Like, no one. Do you know anyone that did it? That they were like told, oh, you can have 2 kids now, and they went and had 2 kids. No one. And that's because the one-child policy has built this kind of terrible, I don't know how to explain it, this economy around education. So because there's been one child, you've got this one precious commodity, this one child of yours, you will make sure that they have the competitive edge, okay? Because, you know, places in universities and so on and so forth are very well sought after. So what you'll do is you'll spend as much money as you can on their education. And I'm talking about not just going to school and so on, but on private tutoring, making sure they get piano lessons, making sure they get extra tutoring, all this kind of nonsense. So because of this, education has become incredibly expensive in China, especially extra education. So you have a tutor that comes and teaches maths. You have a tutor that comes and teaches something else. Let me just pause this. Hang on, I'll go back a little bit. I was paused somewhere in amongst this mess that I was stranded in for a while. Anyway, so in order to pay for your child's education, to give them that competitive edge, it's become incredibly expensive to raise a child in China. So it's not very appealing to have a second child because you can't afford it, you know?
Weirdly, after the one-child policy was lifted, people had less kids. It's too expensive now. You know how Japan stagnated?
Yep.
At least it got rich first. China is very poor in most areas and is stagnating. So you have a situation where people can't afford more than one kid anyway.
Yeah, absolutely right. So then they tried a three-child policy. That also didn't work. Now they've pretty much said have as many kids as you want. And now they're trying to incentivize people to have children. And by doing things like, oh, you'll get longer maternity leave, or you'll get tax breaks, you'll be able to buy an apartment at a reduced cost, all this kind of nonsense. But it's not working. It's too late. All right? The people of our generation in China, they might have one kid, right? But having two is just completely off the table. So they've really screwed themselves hard. Now, there's a way to fix this, of course, and that is to allow immigration. So you can say, hey, look, we need young people to come in to join the workforce, to pay taxes and whatnot. Let's just allow people to immigrate and become Chinese. But that's a problem. The CCP will never allow that to happen. They're too ethnocentric. They're too, we are Chinese, you are other. They cannot allow outsiders to come in and become Chinese. They never will allow that, ever. So they can't fix the problem that way, like the United States does, for instance. The United States, oh, we got an aging population. Oh, well, that's fine. We just let people come in here from other countries that are of the right age, you know, that type of thing. That can't happen in China. In fact, Japan did that, didn't they? Are you saying something about that? Okay. Let's see. Let's see what you got to say, typing away fiercely over there.
Mark my words, Japan and Korea will be immigrant countries before China. Not to mention, who wants to go to China anyway?
I mean, you do have a point. You need to have an attractive place to go. And look, there definitely are countries where people would want to go to China. I mean, definitely, it's a step up from a lot of places. It absolutely is. But at the same time, you know, you got to make it attractive. And being belligerent and terrible to the outside world for years and years is not really a good way to go. So, I mean, look, that's basically the be-all and the end-all of this topic. We just wanted to bring it to your attention that, yes, China doesn't have 1.4 billion people. It's been over-reported and it's going to start to shrink drastically. And India has taken over China's #1 spot in the world as the largest population. So probably see a lot of good things. It might be the largest, safe, stable. And what was the rest of it? I can't remember the rest of that junk. Some made-up nonsense. Anyway, the fact of the matter is that's the be-all and the end-all of this, all right? And that's why China is lying about it, and it is a huge crisis. It's much bigger than most people realize, you know, because this really affects the stability of China going forward and the future of China, you know? Who's going to be there to pay for all this nonsense and to look after all the old people? That's the problem. No one. You know what I mean? It's awful. And with the gender imbalance, it's less likely that you're going to have more families anyway. 30 million surplus men. Yeah.
That's bigger than most countries.
Yeah, exactly. 30 million surplus men. They can't have a family.